Hello. Hey, something I wanted to kind of, talk about today that, and it's kind of humorous in a way, I think, because it's kind of something that's bothered me, for a long time. But it's kind of pettiness, petty, but it's to me. So this didn't, offend anybody. Um, and the thing is, like, um, we're surrounded by things that are just absolutely 180 the mythology that anybody of my age um, grew up just having hammered into us, whether it was our education, right? Or it was, you know, the news where, though much more objective than today, it was still the Republicans would any judicial possible appointment where you know any anything that might look like it might someday have some slight chance of changing the status quo, it would be judicial activism, right? And so they would, lose their mind for weeks on end about it. And so you have that kind of stuff, and of course, we're all familiar. I would hope by now. That kind of touches on another thing of late, but that America, for a very long time, maybe forever, has had a problem with recognizing we are a country among many. And that doesn't mean that we can't be rather central interests you know to our own interests, whatever, right? It doesn't mean that we need to be anti-American. Not, I mean, not at all, really. I think the contrary, because it just means that America at times has to make decisions where we're doing it for the betterment of a country, even if that's so benign as we're letting another country do what they want to do politically. Okay, so they elected in what to us is socialism. Socialism, by the American State Department definition, is a a foreign government that is not agreeing with exploitive contracts with American companies. You know, so that's Exxon has, you know, boned up people in high places and said, hey, Panama, whatever, is, well, this doesn't make sense, but some country with oil, right? They're kind of making us pay market value, maybe even a little under market value for this oil. I mean, that's an insult to America. They need to be paying pennies on the dollar. They need to be giving us labor in that country at pennies on the dollar. And then they ask for rights. What the hell? We can't. How can you allow that, right? And so Republicans, without exception, really, and Democrats typically as well, would go along with that. And so, you know, you kind of grow up though with the idea that the shiny city on a hill, America is the democracy, you know, that everyone needs to, kind of copy whatever, you know. And when we invade a country, it's just for their own good, mind you. So don't feel bad for the hundreds of thousands of citizens that we kill. It had to be done. to save them, right? So that's the kind of shit you grow up with, which obviously that some of that's it's like you start to see that that shit doesn't make sense. But either way, saying that it's good for the betterment of America is the theme. Both parties, any day of the year, right? Well, and then we get to where we are now, where, and I'm leaving out law and order, right? We're a country of law and order, you know. Even where progressives, whether that just means liberals that are wanting a gentler corporate America or whatever, um, you know, or actual progressives with like, we ought to kind of try to feed the poor, give them an actual chance to improve their lives and become more productive, whatever. I mean, there's so many ways that that's the right choice, whether you're looking at it from a human rights standpoint, empathy standpoint, or just dollars and cents standpoint, that you couldn't give a shit about this or that person dying. That's not the deal. You're totally looking at the economics of it. It makes sense. So, why America, why we slant towards the punitive is probably a much deeper, longer conversation for, people that are not, dumbasses like me. But, there are some interesting thoughts out there for why we're the way we are. We're basically a right wing authoritarian state, middle ground. That's kind of our resting place. So, it's kind of weird. But you grow up with all of these very positive American things. We need to follow the law. And then we get to where we are today, where people are arguing, oh, how is what the White House is saying a problem? Well, yeah, this is going. Yeah, I need to kind of restart this or something, and try to center better. So, yep, I need. I probably should write this shit down, and then that would help me stick to one thing. So, all right.